Our final speaker for the Middle East and North Africa region is Helen Chapman, who is showcasing Morocco. Helen is a teacher, trainer, materials writer, and blogger, and she's currently based in Morocco and has also taught in Spain, Poland, Portugal, and the UK. Her interests include early years and primary, and she's also fascinated with exploring teacher beliefs and with the integration of learner reflection in lessons. So, thank you, Helen. Over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jen. Okay, so hi everyone and welcome. And if this is the first session of the day for you, hello. So today I'm going to talk about reviewing activities with early years children. So what I'd like to look at today is just really briefly my context that I'm in, and then kind of the why, the when, and the how of reviewing with early years children. And when I say early years children, I mean before primary school. So under six, maybe in your context, or you might call them very young learners, but I tend to call them early years. And then at the end, there'll be time for some questions, hopefully. So even if I miss your comments in the chat box now, hopefully at the end, you'll have the chance to type some questions. Okay. So let's get started. Okay. So my context, I teach Moroccan learners. Sorry, I teach Moroccan learners who are bilingual in French and Arabic. They tend, this context, they tend to be learning by rote a lot, large classes, and they don't have English in preschool. So if they come to a language school as early as children, like they are totally new to English. And in general, hi Anusha. In general, learning to learn, or encouraging the children to have ownership of their learning is not really a thing here. This is what I've experienced and heard about. So that's the general Moroccan context. My personal context is that I teach for a large cultural language teaching organization, and the parents have extremely high expectations because they pay a lot of money for the lessons. So this is part of why I like to encourage review with my earliest children. So I'm going to look at the why we should be, or why I like to review with my learners. Okay, so why review with earliest children? Well, basically, it involves children in the learning process. They have ownership and some kind of agency. Um, and also, they're more likely to see the relevance in what they're doing. And we're talking about very young children here. So, for them to actually know what they're doing and why is actually quite an achievement. It also helps memory. I know there's some research out there that if reviewing takes place just after the learning has taken place, that learning is remembered better. So it helps their English. It's also a meaningful use of lesson time. I watch a lot of teachers as well. I observe a lot of teachers, and often they feel like teaching very young learners is like kind of like herding kittens, and just kind of trying to control it and give them something to do and keep them busy. But I don't really like to look at it that way. It's we need to be really thinking about what we're doing with early years children, because these are like the first experiences they have maybe learning English. So integrating reviewing with early years children is a really useful way to spend some lesson time. It's not just a worksheet, you know. And the last two on this list are my personal reasons for why I include review, rightly or wrongly. I like it because it builds rapport. You are talking to children about themselves, about what they think, about what they can do, and they really appreciate that. It just makes for like the most lovely classroom atmosphere. I'm going to talk later about how to kind of set up review activities to help this. And probably the most important reason that I do review with early years children, and I know it's not like the best reason, but for me, I have a lot of parents who expect a lot. And the worst thing is if the children get picked up from their lesson, because they get picked up just outside the classroom door, and I can hear the mum or dad or the carer say, "What did you do in English today?" And they say, "Nothing," or "I don't know." And, parents are paying a lot of money, so I think that they would like to know what their children are doing and they would like their child to know. So if you include a review in the class, I find that when the children leave the class and they see their mum and dad or their carer, their family member, they say, "What did you do in English class today?" And they know. They say, "I made this, I did this, I learnt this, I heard this story." Like they are aware of it. "I did really well," for example. Um, so that shouldn't be the main reason, but it is a real benefit, I think. So this is kind of the why. So let's look at the when can we review. Okay. So when should we do these review stages? This is a picture from my classroom, actually in Portugal. And there are little pictures around this kind of clock face, and these are different stages of the lesson. So I like to review in the middle of the lesson. I like to stop, maybe before the break. You can see at the bottom of that clock, there's a water, there's a toilet, and there's a snack. I like to review. Well, what did we do? What did we do before snack time today? Okay, so we sang a song, hello, we played a game, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, as Jen's saying there in the chat box, it is very clear. They know what they're doing, they know what they've done, they know what they're doing next. I'm not saying that I negotiated this with children, but why not adapt this and use it with primary, where you can say, well, when do you want to play the game? Okay, and change it, move it around the clock. I think that's quite a nice idea. But yeah, so I like to review in the middle of the lesson, just so they know the purpose of things as we're doing it and what's coming next. The natural thing for me is to review at the end of the lesson. It kind of ties up the lesson nicely. And also that's just before they leave the class. So just before they see their parents, they are kind of reminded of what they've done in the class. But it could also be at the start of the next lesson. I know obviously a lot of teachers start with a warmer, which is a review of vocabulary or something. Why not start with a review of what we did in the last lesson? Well, what did we do? Oh, last lesson, we read a story about vegetables or something. Okay, well, today we're going to, do whatever, design a pizza or something. So I feel like review is quite flexible. It can be in the middle of the lesson, at the end, or at the start. And this is just a really nice routine as well, actually. And the children are really excited. They want to see what they're going to do in the lesson. So it's quite a nice thing to do. So that's the when of when we can review, but how can we review? I'm talking about it, but I haven't really explained what I mean. So this, I was really inspired by a book by Alison Ibrahim called Teaching Children How to Learn. I'd really recommend it, especially for primary ELT teachers. But essentially they outline that young children are able to review and reflect on their learning, but they need effective questions from an adult. They can't do it spontaneously, but they can be led to do it. And this is something that I've found, I use this in my lessons. So it's been very successful for me. And the kind of questions that you can ask very young learners, young children. What did I do? The stages of the lesson. Okay, so we played a game, we read a story, we made a mask, literally the procedure of the lesson. What did I learn? Which might be transport words, family words, how to ask for a ticket. I don't know. That's the actual learning outcome on your lesson plan, I guess. How well did I do? So reflecting on how much they understood. And also my favorite part is asking the children their favorite part. It's an opportunity for some personalization to find out about the children. And it's really curious, actually. Often what we think will be their favorite part isn't. For example, in my early years classrooms, I always have some books in the corner that children can go to, like storybooks. And often that is the favorite part. It's nothing that I've planned for the lesson. They just love looking at the books, turning the pages, looking at the pictures, asking questions about them. So yeah, so it's kind of interesting to get that insight. And also, I think children really appreciate it when you show an interest in what they like, um, you know, and you value their contribution. Um, so these are 4 questions. I'm going to show you some examples of how I use these in class. Um, but asking questions to English language learners who are 5 years old or 6 years old, it's hard because, for example, I don't speak Arabic or French. And actually, I think this review, it's not actually about English, it's about learning. So it's kind of unfair to make or try and get children to do this in English. Why not have them do it in their mother tongue? You're going to get more information from them. It's going to be more accurate. And actually, talking about learning is very difficult. It's difficult to do in your mother tongue. I've talked to teachers about this, and even as teachers, sometimes it's hard to say, well, what did I learn and what did I do? And actually, separating those two can be quite hard to articulate. So I think it's unfair to ask them to do it in English. This isn't an English test. It's about the learning that's taken place. So, it needs to be done probably in L1. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about what that means because, for example, I don't speak L1. So how do I deal with that? You'll find out later. And also what I like to do is, you could just ask questions to the class. If you've only got a couple of minutes left at the end of the lesson, the children are in a line with their coats on. Yes, you could say, what did we do today? And try and have them, shout it out. Or how well did you do today? Thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever. That might work, but I like to try and use like a multimodal approach, and I'm gonna kind of talk about that a little bit and show some examples of what I mean by that for each of these questions. So first of all, I'm gonna look at the question, what did I do? Okay, so really simple. Here's a handout. You don't need to use a handout. Can be very low prep, but for example, for me, if I have 4 main stages in the lesson, I find it easy to give these boxes so that children kind of have that support. And I can tell them, okay, can you remember the 4 big things that we did today? And have them draw a picture of the different stages. And it's really interesting because sometimes children think that stages are different in your mind, in your lesson plan. One stage might exist in its entirety, but for children, they might see it as 2 or 3 different things, which is kind of interesting. And I'm just going to show you some examples from children. So this is from a 4 or 5-year-old, and this is what he drew. So the first box was the hello song that we sang. The next one was a Halloween story. The third one is they made a bat out of card. And the last one is we use the Learning Time with Timmy product from British Council, and this was a Halloween video about the sheep, Timmy. So that is a sheep there. Yeah, so that's quite nice. So it's really simple. You don't need to give a handout. You don't need to prepare this. It's no extra paper. They could just do that in their notebook. I just like to give them something with some boxes to kind of let them know my expectations, that there are 4 parts to the lesson, for example. But it doesn't have to be drawing. It could be something simple like mime. What did we do today? Children love to mime and use drama, and, they can mime playing Snap. They can mime making a bat, ask them to do this. And then what I like to do is have them sit in a circle at the end of the class and we talk about what we did, what we learned, and they can show each other their pictures or they can mime for each other. And it's just a really lovely time. It's really kind of like holistic, and, there's a lot of eye contact and stuff. And it's a really lovely and very simple thing, but a really meaningful use of lesson time, I think. 8+ is, it's very different. But I think that some of these could be used for older primary. Why not? They might need less guidance. Sorry, I'm just reacting to the chat box in case you can't see there. Okay, so let's move on to the next question, which is what did I learn? Again, you don't need a handout. However, in my context, I'm thinking a lot about the parents. I'm not saying that's the best way to be, but for me, I don't want the children to just have pictures in their notebook. I want the parent to be able to open it and see, what did I learn today? Okay, and then that's a picture their child did, and they can ask their child, oh, this is what you did in class. Okay, and it's like a springboard, hopefully, for them to chat about what they did in the lesson. And I've got some examples. They're pretty dark, from 5 to 6-year-olds. And this is, what did I learn today? And this is Halloween vocabulary. So there's a bat, there's a pumpkin, there's another bat, and then there's some flowers, because of course we're telling a story and it was in a wood, so a woodland setting. So they drew some flowers. It's quite nice. Again, it doesn't have to be pictures. You could have them make what did they learn today with Lego. And children are very imaginative, so that can be really interesting. Or even I have some laminated shapes on card. So I've got triangles, circles, and they're different colors, and that's really interesting. What did I learn today? And the children really have to figure out how to make the picture to demonstrate what they learned. You know, transport vocabulary, flower vocabulary, whatever it is. So again, almost zero preparation for the teacher, but a really meaningful use of time in the lesson. Yeah, so that's quite a nice idea, I think. So now the next question is, how well did I do? You might be familiar with things like this. You can change these pictures to fit the theme. Stars always work, but for example, the flower theme, we were learning different flower names. So, you know, this fit. And just to demonstrate to the children, you know, one flower or one star means I don't understand, or I need help, or I need more time. 2 flowers or 2 stars is it's okay for me, and 3 is I understand, or I can do this. And it's really important to explain to the children that it's not a test and that it's okay to put 1 star. It's okay to put 1 flower. And at first they don't like it, but with encouragement over time, they really can reflect and say, only 1 star for me, or 2 stars for me. And these, I'm talking about 5-year-olds, they are able to do this, but they need an understanding adult there asking the right questions and showing them the way, basically. So I've got some examples. So these are from the 4 or 5-year-olds, confident in what they can do. And here is the 5 to 6-year-olds. And you'll see one boy at the bottom there, he only gave himself 2 stars. But this is great, because then you can say, you know, Omar, why only 2 stars? Okay, and he says whatever the reason is, and then you can even ask, okay, so what's next? How can you do differently next time? Children can be really aware of you know of how they're doing and how well they do. And the older they are, the more capable they are of this. And this is also a really nice thing to do, because you might find, sadly, that some children always give themselves 1 star or 1 flower. And you can really notice that and say, no, but you did really well. Do you remember this? Do you remember you did that? Do you remember that you were a really good friend and you shared something? Like, you can really look at that, because some children will always give themselves 1 star, which is sad, but also something that it's good that you're aware that they have that feeling and that you can kind of help them with that. But, you know, the whole idea is that it's just not judgmental, you know. And, you know, I've even had 5 and 6-year-olds be like, oh, you know, 1 star. Why is that? I'm tired today. Wow, they're so aware and they're so young. So it's a really good thing to do. I'm just going to move on because I'm running out of time a little bit, I think. What was my favorite part? As I said, this is my favorite part. This is an example of using Play-Doh to do this. So it's something very tactile. And in the bottom, in the blue box on the bottom, those are pumpkins. because we were doing Halloween words, and that was the favorite part, was the Halloween story. And then the other three are supposed to be pigs, because as I said, we use these videos with farm animals in them, and they loved this Halloween video about this pig, so that's what they made. And it's so good because they're creating things. It's very physical, it's very tactile. You can go around and monitor and ask, what are you making and why was it? Oh, it was funny. Yes, it was so funny. Da, da, da. And it's not just between you and the child working alone. I like to get them in a circle afterwards, and they are so curious to see each other's creations. They are genuine. Sometimes in ELT we kind of we set up kind of fake situations where you have to interview a partner, but you don't really care, or you interview a partner about, something that you all know about because we need to use the language. With early years, they're like genuinely, they want to know if you've created a pig out of Play-Doh, like they want to see it. They want to know your favorite part and they want to show you their favorite part. It's also quite nice for the teacher to do it. Yeah, Gail Ellis is here, so this is a massive influence on me. Yeah, so lovely. It's just a lovely time. It doesn't just have to be with Play-Doh. I love to do this with finger painting. It's because it's quite simple to clean up afterwards. Obviously, pictures, mime, as I mentioned, Lego before. The children, like they don't just want the teacher to know. They want everyone in the class to know their favorite part. So it's really lovely time in the class. Um, so yeah, so really, I'm going to stop now and be ready for some questions. But I just want to give you some takeaways. Really, children can be active. They can be aware of what they're doing and why. I think often we underestimate children, especially young children, and it's not fair. If you, I mean, they're not going to do it spontaneously, but if you're an understanding adult, if you have L1, I actually didn't mention it earlier, but I meant to. I don't speak French or Arabic, but I have a teaching center assistant who he's usually outside, but for the review stage, he comes in and he helps me. And the children have a wonderful relationship with him as well. And it's just like this lovely, open, holistic time. And children are aware. They can identify what they did and how, and what they learned and how well they did. They won't do it the first time, maybe, but the next time they'll be better, and the next time they'll be better. And by after, a couple of lessons, they can do this. As I said before, it helps memory. So it's really good because their English seems to get better because they remember the language that you've been teaching them. It avoids the nothing response. The parents love this. I get really good feedback from parents because their child knows what they've done. Their child can tell them, what did you do today? I learned transport words. I know how to sing a song about cars. You have teenagers who can't give that response after English lessons. So it's really impressive for the parents. Not that that should be the most important thing, but it kind of is for me. And, we need to ask the right questions. We almost always need to do that in L1. If you can't speak the L1 of your learners, speak to your manager, speak to your director of studies. This is an important part of the lesson. It's fundamental. Don't just give them another worksheet to color in, which is just a random thing. Why not get them to reflect? And use a multimodal approach. Play-Doh, Lego, shapes, drawing, painting, miming. There are so many ways to do it. And it is a really useful part of the lesson. It's more worthwhile to do this than to do something, just to fill the time. So yeah, so I hope that was useful for everyone. And we can have some questions now. I think we've got some time. So if you type them in the box, and while I'm waiting for you to do that, I actually have some pre-prepared questions because I've talked to a lot of teachers about this. So as you're typing, I'm just going to move on to the bottom question here, which I was asked just last week by a teacher that I work with. They are rolling around on the floor by the end of the lesson. How can I get them to review anything? It's a really good point. Um, okay, so if you know that by the end of the lesson, and some of the lessons that children have with us, for example, are quite long for them, make it physical, make it mime, make it, put the different stages of the lesson on cards, have them around the room. What was your favorite part? Run and touch it. There are so many things. If they're they've got a lot of energy and they've lost some focus, then use that. Um, a question, can you speak some Arabic? No. Salam. Salam alaikum. That's it. Very little. I don't speak Arabic to the children, but they are so understanding, and they just deal with it. They're really cool with that, and just using the teaching center assistant is really helpful for me. And yeah, and with early years it doesn't work, but with young primary, so you'd be surprised what they can figure out how to communicate if they really need to. Um, I'd say also I'd be surprised. There's one of these questions on the screen here is about I'm not allowed to use L1 in the classroom. Some of us work in organizations or for language schools that really are against it. I would say, first of all, talk to your manager. It is a useful part of the lesson. It's a controlled part of the lesson, and parents will love it. Parents will be happy. So, if you work in a kind of organization who really frowns on using L1 in the classroom, they're going to get the results that they want, which is happy parents. Also, I mean, could the puppet, if you have a puppet in the class, could your puppet use L1? Could your puppet be involved in review, asking questions if you speak the mother tongue? And like I say, if not, if you're working with children who are pre-primary, for welfare anyway, there should be always someone around who speaks the mother tongue because children can be distressed or something. So there'll be someone around probably. Can you use them? Yeah, kind of interesting. I'm going to try and look at some questions. Yeah, use the energy of the young ones. It's important. I mean, maybe that's what they need. That's okay. Oh, thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, you know what, Phil? Even if you don't teach early years, I've done this with primary and I've done this with lower secondary. You just have to change the questions and the support you give. I would say this is useful for any learner, any young learner, and any adult really to include that. Yeah, puppets to use the L1. It's a really good idea because if you can use the L1, it kind of puts that barrier, and it's not you, it's the character. Yeah, it's kind of a nice thing to do. And yeah, with adults, Gail, absolutely. It is hard to talk about learning sometimes, and a lot of adult learners don't know what they're doing and why. So why not just get them involved? I mean, with teenagers, I use review. They have like a learner diary, and they have to talk about a lot about what the next stage is for them, and they take a bit more ownership. Like, what did I do? How did I find it? And then, often they'll say, "Oh, it was difficult or whatever." And then my next question is, "Okay, so what's next for you? Your choice." You know. Yeah, that's great, Jen. Thank you for that comment. I'll just quickly answer one more question, which is on the screen. I don't have time to include review. I totally disagree with this. I think we all have time. It could be something really quick that you do in the line before you ask them to leave and the parents pick them up. It could be something physical where you don't need to create anything. Um, However, I think that 10 minutes in a lesson is doable because what else are you going to do with that 10 minutes? Give them a worksheet. No, give them a worksheet that's about review. Yes. I think that it's a really useful way to spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes of the lesson. I've had a lot of success with it. So really the takeaway from this is that I hope some of you will try and include review. You don't have to do don't have to answer or ask all of these questions. What did you do? How did you do it? What did you learn? You don't need to ask all those questions every lesson. Maybe just one, maybe just some. But yeah, it's really good to do. So please do think about it. And even with primary, I think there's a lot of scope for adaptation to this. So thank you very much. And I think that's the end of my talk. So
Yeah.
I don't know if Jen or Heike are
Hi,
going to
Helen.
take over now.
Yeah, thank you. Great stuff
Okay.
there. Lots of really
Thank you.
practical things that I will certainly be putting into use.
Thank